Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Reference Point. Appreciate your coming back for this second set of discussions with Bruce Prevel and John Renesch regarding thoughts about the future, how we can take the systems that seem to be broken and raise things to another level for our futures, for our kids, our grandkids, and beyond. So, gentlemen, welcome back to Reference Point. Pleasure to have you back.
Great, thank you.
Likewise.
So, at the end of the last show, we had just started talking about how how do you fix what's broken and where do you start? And you were saying, John, that's sort of the kind of that's where you are right now, trying to figure out how do you manage to affect this kind of a change in a way that doesn't create anarchy, so to speak.
Right.
So let's explore that a little bit more, because I think that one of the things that is clear to a lot of people is that certain things, the way they currently are not functioning in a way that helps you survive well. Okay. And if I may come up with a crude analogy, if you've got a car that keeps breaking down and it can't get you to and from work, you're going to find another mode of transportation. You're either going to take public transportation, you're going to bike, you're going to ride a horse, you're going to get a new car, whatever. You're just not going to keep putting the time and energy and effort into that broken device in order to try to get you where you're going to go, because it's not doing it anymore. If our systems of education, political interaction, business interaction, communication, etc., are damaged and can't easily be fixed, we have to do something about it. But that raises the whole question of how do you get people to recognize that something needs to be done?
Well, I get that question a lot, Dave. How do we get them? Like, I don't mean it's in your case, but a lot of people are thinking, well, I'm enlightened and I have that point of view, but how do we get them to change? And it's asked a lot, and I've never been able to successfully say I've been able to change somebody. And I can say nobody's ever changed me. I change when I want to change and when I'm damn ready to change.
Right.
And I think most people are that way. They're not going to be changed, but they may change. And certain things may cause people to change. Either something very good happens that they want it, or something very bad happens to them that they don't want. That usually is what motivates people to change. So I look at it more as, what can I do? What can I do? Not to get them to change, but what can I do myself to start changing things? And if we have a more engaged citizenry, a lot of people think that being a good citizen is voting or serving on jury duty. And they even try to avoid the jury duty, and a lot of times don't vote. Half of us don't vote. You look back at our founding fathers and the mindset, the worldview we had then, and people put skin in the game, man. They put their lives at risk. They did a lot of stuff to be participants in and be citizens of this new country. And to be fully engaged as a citizen means we take responsibility for the systems that we have in place. Systems are supposed to serve us.
Right.
Right now, we are serving the systems, in case you haven't noticed that.
Right.
So we're slaves to the systems that we created. Duh. Okay, let's say, hey, time out, it's time to give control back to us.
Take back control. Bruce, I want to engage you in this discussion at this point, because you've done a lot of things tied to getting people involved and engaged in and participating in the process, in the political process specifically. And I think John's point is well taken, that people are going to change or take action because they deem that it's in their best interest, either from a positive perspective or from a removal of a negative perspective. So how does that play out in some of the experiences you've had?
One of the things that I'm involved with is a volunteer organization called Results. And we're a grassroots advocacy organization, and we're working with Congress to affect legislation that impacts poverty around the world. And the thing that I've seen that works with members of Congress is it's not so much the logic, the reasoning with which we approach them. It's never quite enough. But what works is when you connect with their heart, like tell them a story about a person in Tanzania and what their life is like, not having any way to climb out of poverty. There's no way that they're going to ever get out of poverty, and tell the story of a real person and what they've done to make that happen, and then tell the member of Congress what role we can play in enabling that person to do that. And starting from their heart, they realize that this is really important. They realize that this kind of feeling is what brought them into public service in the first place and got them to be in Congress as a member of Congress. And it kind of encourages them and gives them back their courage to be bold and to do something because it makes sense and it's the right thing, and it's not the right thing because I told them it was the right thing. It's the right thing because they told themselves it was the right thing. Then they're inspired, then they're taking action and not just saying, yeah, I'll think about it.
Right. You know, I think that's a great story and a good viewpoint, because when you were saying that, I was reflecting on the fact that many nonprofit organizations use the same kind of a concept. It's like you appeal to what we are at our core nature, the emotional component of whatever it is that's going on. And I think people intrinsically, when they connect with that, understand what is right, what is not right, and what would be the best way to proceed or the better way to proceed. The challenge keeps coming back to, in my mind, to then this, what's my special story from my interests viewpoint, and the special story and the emotional component from this other interest viewpoint, and getting us all up to that next level. So if I'm going to change, if I'm going to raise myself up, I have to have something that is relevant, important, appropriate for me to then be willing to make that shift. So how do we have those kinds of desires become positive desires? Because the emotional thing that we're talking about here is the same strategy that people are using to recruit to go to the Taliban and you know, bombers to go out and blow themselves up and stuff like that. They're appealing to the emotional thing, but they're giving, it's not looking to raise the to the higher level, you know. So
it's raising to a higher level from their perspective.
From their
sometimes.
perspective,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. So,
I think part of what gets people to change. Stories are great, by the way. They're way better than concepts, and I deal in concepts a lot. So, but stories stick, and concepts a lot of times don't. But what I hear very frequently that gets people engaged and concerned is people when they have grandchildren. Sometimes when they have children, but usually when they have grandchildren, they start to see that what their children and grandchildren are going to be inheriting, and they get concerned out of that. That's a common one, but there's all different kinds. Some people just really angry at something that's going on, and they let that anger be generating their passion for doing something. Look at the Mothers Against Drunk Driving and where that came from. Just one woman got very angry about the death of her child, and look what happened out of that. A huge paradigm change in the way we think about driving. I used to drink and drive. It's no big deal. I'm old enough to have done that. But I'm not proud of it, but that was common. That's what you did. It was kind of macho. Now you don't even think twice of it. You just hand the keys over to somebody.
right. So, Bruce, how does this relate to the 21st century democracy ideas that you've been formulating?
I was, as you were talking, John, I was thinking about what is it that lets people have the courage to change, have the courage to look for the bigger picture. And what I see all too often these days is people being afraid. That if you think about what is it like to walk down the street in front of your house, and what would it be like to walk down a dark and dangerous street in a place that you don't know, the difference is fear. I mean, until something happens, then you know why you were afraid. Let's say in that place. But if people look around when they're afraid, they see different things. They listen they listen and hear things to be afraid of and things as threats.
Right.
And I think a lot of the this splitting and into so many different factions that seem to be at war with each other has been because people are using stories that invoke fear in people.
Clearly.
Because people, whether it's stories that bring courage and hope, or stories that bring fear and suspicion, that changes how people see the world.
Well, that certainly is true of what I remember of the, I won't call it discussion, I'll call it information that was going on regarding the healthcare debate. Okay, I mean, there were all these stories, and it was, but it was targeting into, I mean, literally from both sides on the fear phenomenon. You know, you will end up, Mr. Retired Person, losing this, this, and this. On the other side is, if you don't do this, you know, you and your children are going to die because you're not going to have health care. So it was not, none of the discussions that I can really remember was from a positive perspective. Maybe it was there, but I only remember the ones that were pounding the drum from the doom and gloom side of it. So that's part of an existing systemic phenomenon too. I mean, when we look at how has marketing and advertising developed over time? You know, if it bleeds, it reads, I think was what used to be one of the big adages for the newspaper industry. Lead with that, you know, all the things, because people, for whatever reason, get interested in all the other people's problems.
Right.
It's the rubbernecker phenomenon, driving down the road. You know, why are you looking at someone else's misfortune? But that's part, again, maybe of the adolescence in us as a species. Yes?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. You know, when you have a teenager that's got a lot of money and got a fast car, but he's still a teenager, that can be dangerous. You know? And that's what we've got right now. And this country is the teenager with a fast car.
I think that we have, it's like each of us has a capacity, or it's like we have, it's like you've heard of the left brain and right brain?
Sure.
Well, we each have the capacity to be in one of two modes. One is a mode of feeling connected with people, feeling love, feeling compassion, feeling generosity and kindness. And the other mode is feeling suspicious and afraid and aggressive and justified, and I'm wrong, right, and they're wrong, and so forth. And where anybody is at any given moment is a function of their youth, how they were raised, the current circumstances that in their family and so forth, the current circumstances in society, and what they see. So some people start out kind of on this side, and some people start out on the other side, and some people are sort of in the middle. But whatever happens is filtered through that tendency to look through the filter that we carry around with us. What fear does, and what appealing to fear throws people into that side. And when it's hope and courage, it moves people to the other side, the connected side, the compassion side. And if you look around in our society now, there is so much fear that it's making everything work very badly. Where it goes to with people who have that a lot is they think, I have to take care of myself because nobody else is going to do it. So I'm just looking out for me.
Right.
And that leads to no view of society and what's going to be good for everybody. That's the last thing someone like that would think of, because they're just looking out for themselves. And when they look around, they see that nobody's looking out for them, so they know that they have the right point of view, and they tend to stay there. It's part of the challenge.
In our first segment, John, we talked a little bit about engaging, if you communicate, etc. To start that process of being able to listen, and you know, because there's always a middle ground. There have got to be processes in place that are allowing to facilitate that kind of thing going on right now? I mean, there's got to be. It's not just the three of us sitting around this table where we're exchanging ideas. So can you talk a little bit, either of you, about what you know of that's going on out there that maybe people could find a way to connect it into?
There are tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of organizations out there doing all kinds of social good. And a lot of them are dealing with resolving conflict. Some of them are fairly low profile. I happen to be familiar with one that's doing fantastic work in the world. Under the radar, they're getting grants from the UK, they're getting grants from different governments, they're getting, even USAID is giving them some money. And they're doing great conflict resolution. They're creating peace, so to speak, where peace hasn't been before. But that's a fix-it kind of situation. And one of the things to get real change to happen that we really desperately need is a positive vision that a lot of people can get behind. Not a positive vision put out by the left, or a positive vision put out by the right, or a positive vision put out by the Taliban, or a positive vision put out by... It's a positive vision that most people can get on board with. Not everybody. That's never going to happen.
Sure.
And I have a book that's not published yet with my agent that I hopefully is going to paint that picture for a positive vision, because that's one thing I see lacking, is that we are still pushing off the negative and trying to fix things that are broken instead of having a positive vision. Because to create a new system, we're going to have a fairly clear picture for what is wanted and needed now in 2010, 2050. Not something that has been reinforced and patched up for the last couple of hundred. I'm not even talking the United States. I mean, there's a lot of dysfunction out there. The UN has become pretty impotent too.
I'm going to draw an analogy here, and this is somewhat of a crude analogy, but when you're talking about finding a vision of some type that people can get behind, the thing that came to mind to me, based on my, when I was growing up, was this thing that happened in the United States, and it actually happened globally, when John Kennedy said, we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade and bring him back safely. And that changed the way people were thinking. That changed the way business was done. That changed engineering. It changed education. It changed economics. It changed all kinds of things, because there was this grand idea that enough people could get behind that it sort of just rolled across the planet. And but we need something like that, not just from an achievement level of we're going to go do this or do that or go to Mars and, or find a new energy source or whatever. It has to be this. I don't know how exactly to say this, but the way this is speaking to me is we have to find a way to set this vision to bring ourselves as, this species living on the planet up to that next level of activity. And it's beyond whatever the economics or the politics or the educational forms or the healthcare systems or the blah, blah, blah. Is that?
One of the things about Kennedy's vision that it's important to remember is that we didn't know how to do it.
That's true.
It wasn't just setting a goal and speeding up the assembly line or something like that. We did not know how to get to the moon. I mean, remember the day when man gets to the moon and, all that sort of thing? Right. Go take a fly on the moon. So because of that vision, it was positive and compelling enough that we actually learned how to get man to the moon and back. But we had to learn it. So right now we have, if there's a vision for a better system for governance, for education, a system for humanity now, we don't know how to do it. We don't know what it is. We don't know how to do it. Because that's the challenge I constantly get is, well, show us to it. How are we going to get there? That was a great example. We didn't know how to get there then, but we got there.
That's true.
One of the things that worked about the moon program was that there were people who had been saying for many years that you can't do it, it's impossible, because of this reason or that reason, that it's just, you can't do it. And what Kennedy did with this moon program was he actually included them in the program and said, why do you think it's impossible? What's the problem that we need to solve before we can do it? And once they started focusing on solving a problem, they became people that were part of making it happen,
Right.
rather than the people that prevented it from being attempted.
Well, that is, I like that. I mean, that is key, because too often you go in and say, we got this solution now. All of you people out there just need to, go along with this because we figured it out.
Right.
But so what we're really talking about is engaging as many people as possible into recognizing that we need to figure this out, and we need to figure it out together, which I think is very cool.
A lot of people have resorted to cynicism as a way of coping.
Oh, yeah.
So they're just, we're always had wars, we're always going to have wars. That's just human nature. You hear that all the time. You may even said that some of the time. So the idea that we get out of our cynicism, they say that a cynic, if you scratch a cynic, you find a disillusioned idealist. So if that cynic gets talked to, gets engaged in conversation, they can become the best idealist, because they're going to just take off that cynicism, coat of cynicism they put on, and they're back to reawakening and re-energizing their idealist in them.
One of the things about this that is actually exciting to me is that it's not we've got a bunch of problems, but guess what? There are solutions. We just have to find them. And
we may not know where they are.
We
right
don't know
now.
where they are,
Yeah.
but that they can be found. So it's not a doom and gloom and negative situation. The first step in solving any problem is recognizing that there's a problem. And I had always heard it said that the solution to any problem is contained within a problem itself, somewhere, and you have to find out where that is, and you get the starting point in order to grow something else. So, but this is a very positive perspective that we're talking about here right now, that we can figure these things out. And I like the idea of trying to incorporate people. Now, we've tried to do this with, NATO and then various other organizations that have tried to pull governments together to talk about stuff, but they tend to not, I don't know, maybe they don't trust each other enough to engage. I don't know how that plays out, because I haven't been involved in those directly, but it's got to start somewhere. So the idea is it just should start right here, right now, today, at this table.
Egos show up in lots of different ways. One is as opinion within individuals, but it also can show on nationalism.
Oh, sure.
It's just a big ego, national ego. And Einstein, one of the beauties he said is that nationalism is an infantile disease. An infantile disease. So it's time to be thinking of ourselves as global citizens. And
Right.
yes, we happen to live in, so we're not going to give up our nationality. We still cherish that. It's like we cherish the block we work on or the neighborhood that we're in, but we still belong to that city. But we need to become thinking more like global citizens. That has a responsibility to the commons, like air and water and all of that, rainforests, all of that sort of thing, if we're going to keep from poisoning ourselves and going extinct. And that's a real possibility.
Yeah, that wouldn't
And
be
I'm
too
not doing
much
that
fun.
to monger fear here.
No.
I'm just saying that is in the realm of possibility.
I think it's clear that there are challenges that are facing us. Some of them are pretty significant. Okay, I for one, I talk with a lot of people about the reality that we need to be better stewards of the planet. Okay, because I got to live here, and future generations need to live here, and if you can't breathe the air and you can't drink the water and that sort of stuff, then forget about it. You're not going to survive, and then the viruses and the bacteria will take over and be the leading thing on the planet. We have maybe 3 minutes left in the show, so I wanted to just ask each of you if you have a final thought or summary concept that you wanted to relay to the viewers about this topical subject matter we've been discussing.
When I said earlier that people can get in a mode of thinking that they had better take care of just themselves, look out for themselves, because nobody else is going to do it. It colors their whole life. Well, that can exist at the level of an organization. It can exist as a business that just goes for its own advantage and its own profits and its own, products that are really unsafe. But it costs them less to make them because they're unsafe, and the lack of safety shows up for those people, not us. So as long as it's not going to get us in trouble, we'll do it. And we've heard about companies in China doing this, got a lot of press this year. There are companies in this country that do it.
Sure.
So as a company, you can be looking out for yourself and just for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
As a nation, you can be looking out for yourself and making sure that you win and they lose, and you have control and you dominate. And we've been in that kind of place in recent years ourselves as a country. So it's some of the basic principles about how people operate together and how they view themselves.
As a zero-sum game, which
Yes.
is not necessarily correct. John, last thoughts from you?
I've been working on being an advocate for organizational and social transformation for 25 or so years. And I listen to the words that I speak here and some of the words I write in my writings, and I could be interpreted as a doom and gloomer. But I am an eternal optimist on this, and I don't know why. I feel blessed that I have been able to return to optimism, or I wouldn't be doing this. And I look at certain situations. There's days when I have to let the despair in, because it's not good to leave emotions, trying to bury your emotions. I learned that a long time ago. But so there's days when I have to take an hour or two and soak in the despair and just let it seep in there. But then it passes, and then I go back to being optimistic again. So I'd say that if I came across as being a pessimist or a doom and gloomer, that's not the case. I really think, I know that human beings have the power to make this transition. I know that. I don't know if we will, or if we have the collective will to do it, or how that's going to happen.
Or how that's going to happen.
But I know we can.
But we know we can.
I know we can.
And with that, I think we're going to close the show. I really appreciate both of you, John and Bruce, being here to join me and to discuss this with the viewing audience, because it's our future too. We have to create our own future. And so thank you very much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your being out there to watch us, and we'll see you next time on Reference Point.